Hey pals, it's me, Artie, the pronouns only, and my video this week is talking about haunting the narrative in Life is Strange. Don't know, trying something different, so sorry. Also, Layla is asleep down here. She might make some noises. You might make some noises. Nice. She's a nice girl. Trying something a bit different where, I don't know, I came across this thread of people talking about characters that haunt the narrative in different things, and someone brought up, obviously, Rachel Amber from Life is Strange. And the more I was sort of looking into this particular trope, the more I was like, Life is Strange has a character haunting the narrative in every game. So I just wanted to go over some of that. So the general gist of the haunting the narrative trope is pretty much a character who is either dead from the start, dead from before we join the narrative, or dead soon after we join the narrative, and their death heavily impacts the story afterwards. This character is often sort of considered the ghost, which is another trope that basically refers to a character who is often referred to but never quite makes it onto the screen, or they are pretty much almost entirely developed by flashbacks. They also sometimes do appear as a ghost or in the afterlife, and can also be developed through I think this is particularly prevalent in the Life is Strange games, where it's through diary entries, finding evidence, photos, things like that. That's a very Life is Strange story-based roleplay kind of game. Finding out as much as you can by finding as many bits of information, many bits of evidence or proof or whatever, to understand what happened, blah, blah, blah. So obviously our OG is Rachel Amber in Life is Strange 1. We don't see her at all and don't know that she is actually dead until the very end of the game. We continue getting to know her as a character through notes, clues, and anecdotes from other characters, especially from other schoolmates, and somewhat through Chloe. She's kind of resistant to actually talking about Rachel Amber outright, besides looking for her, and she's also literally the reason the plot is happening, pretty much. And then we also get more backstory about her and Chloe when the prequel is released, Before the Storm. She also fits the Lost Lenore trope, who can often be this particular character as well. Also, Lost Lenore, Hunger Games, Lenore Dove, an element to the thousands of meanings behind everything Suzanne Collins does that I had not known before, just being bored and looking into this, because she was Chloe's deceased love interest, pretty much. The Lost Lenore is another character's deceased love interest. The three defining criteria for a Lost Lenore are a love interest of a prominent character, Chloe, is dead, or some equivalent of dead, such as lost in another dimension, frozen forever, or just genuinely believed to be dead, which she also would have fit into if she hadn't actually have been dead before the story begins, or dies relatively early in the story. This was long before the story even really started. Their death has significant ongoing impact, consequences, and relevance for the remainder of the story. Rachel Amber also obviously fits the dead all along trope. That's basically where you realise all along the character has been dead. That's pretty much the setup with Rachel Amber in the first Life is Strange game. There's also somebody I did forget. I can't believe I did. Oh my goodness. There is also somebody haunting the narrative in Before the Storm, and that is Chloe's dad. It seems like the one thing, two things Life is Strange loves is someone haunting the narrative and just generally dead fathers. Chloe's father, William, is haunting the narrative even in Life is Strange, the first game. We learn a bit about him through Max, because Max did obviously know Chloe, her dad and her mum and stuff as children, so she knew some things about William from personal experience. And then also there are things that she sees in Life is Strange. But then also it is a much more obvious and overhanging haunting the narrative in Before the Storm, because that is centering Chloe. She keeps finding parts of her father in different places, like the car in the junkyard that he had the accident in. Obviously, as David has been moving in, they have been moving out a lot of her father's things, which she's finding elsewhere. But then also, mainly in this game, she has a lot of dreams, and she has a lot of dreams about him specifically that might start off nice, like them driving in the car together and talking, or sitting by a campfire, but they always turn twisted and kind of terrifying. But I think a lot of the haunting the narrative for Chloe happens in dreams, because she isn't one of the characters with powers. A bit like Sean. Sean is the only other main character you play who doesn't have powers in this series, which I think could be an interesting thing to look at, and look at the parallels between the two in a bit more detail. But, you know, he doesn't have the haunting the narrative in the same way as a lot of the magical, superpowered, like, I don't even really know what to call it, because nobody really ever fully addresses it. I also love that there is a hint that maybe even Rachel Amber had powers because of the fire that happened in Before the Storm. I think that could also be a very specifically interesting parallel to look at some point. There seems to be a couple of non-magical people who only attract magical people to their lives. But yeah, I wanted to add that in there because just kind of completely forgot, even though this is the game that I was in the middle of playing, I think last Christmas. A lot of the screenshots I've used from Before the Storm are my own. But yes, there is also William haunting the narrative in Before the Storm. His death is basically the reason that Chloe becomes this version of Chloe. She's a very angry, upset, rebellious teenager, testing all the boundaries that people are trying to give her because, you know, her father's died. And that kind of leads to her finding and meeting Rachel Amber, which is then the beginning of this whole series in the first place. And then when you think about Life is Strange 2, I would say that Sean and Daniel's father could possibly be considered as a character haunting the narrative. We only really get to know him through our main characters and the people that they interact with. So obviously, Sean is the older brother. He's the one with the most actual stories that he remembers and can tell. There are going to be stories as well that Daniel remembers and talks about and brings up. They also meet their grandparents on their mother's side. They meet their mother. All of those people had some things to share about their father. And then also when other characters are asking Sean, who you play in that game, about his life, about his family, etc., he discloses pieces here and there about his father as well. And obviously as well, it's a really big part of the plot. He dies literally right at the start, and it is the not motivation, but it is sort of the catalyst, I guess, is that the right word, for this plot to be starting. Because Sean and Daniel get in a fight with the neighbor. Regardless of what you choose to do, a police officer turns up, shoots Sean and Daniel's dad. He then dies. This is when Daniel's powers begin or are triggered, and then they are on the run, Sean and Daniel, because they are perceived as a threat, perceived as murderers of that kid or whatever. Anyway, and the police officer, who I think is dead as well because of Daniel's magic powers he had no idea he had. He is the cause of the plot to happen and continues to happen. Life is Strange 3, a little bit complicated. Life is Strange 3, I would say the main one is Alex's brother, but there is also possibly elements of her father haunting the narrative as well. but maybe in a different trope way. I think mainly it is her brother haunting the narrative. Alex, the main character who you play as, and her brother are assumed to be orphaned slash abandoned by their parents. Alex's brother dies very early and again is the cause of a lot of this plot happening. Alex had already had powers for most of her life, just didn't realize really what they were or what that meant until this part of the game, this part this part of her overall narrative. Alex basically moved to a new town because that's where her brother had been living for several years after they were separated in foster care, because she wanted to get to know her brother, find some roots pretty much, but he dies very early on in the plot. It's before Alex can really get to know him for who he is presently rather than who she knew him as in childhood, for example. And then pretty much the plot for this game is working out how he died, why he died, who did it. And it's kind of unfurling this conspiracy in this supposedly calm, friendly small town in the mountains. Very picturesque. It's like one of my favorite things about Life is Strange is just how fucking beautiful the game design is. Fucking love it. I'm really picky about stuff like that with video games and graphic novels. We also then get to know her brother through the people of the town, including the people who are the reason why he died. Very weird, but also through, because when Alex moves there and her brother's died, she has been given his flat apartment or whatever above the pub he worked in to live in. So it's full of all of his stuff. And as you explore the apartment and the little balcony terrace thing, there's lots of things that he has, either taken photos of, made notes about. He's got instruments, games he's played, bottles of alcohol with stories, etc. Sometimes the character will learn about her brother just through seeing these objects, reading what's on there. Sometimes it'll be from another character being there as well and explaining what this, weird item, like the backstory, is for. And, we definitely learn a lot about him through his girlfriend or fiance. I can't remember if they were engaged. Her son in particular. Also, who's one of the fucking love interests? The man love interest is her brother's best friend. And so he especially has a lot to say or share about her brother. And then we find out that this is also the place where their father died. There are some parts of this plot that I don't fully remember. It's been a while since I have played / watched a playthrough. So there are some bits that I don't fully quite remember or understand how they progressed to that. Their father maybe vaguely fits haunting the narrative because as well, we don't learn anything from him directly, really. It's all through memories or through talking about him among other characters, but it isn't as strong as the brother because there was a complex, not great relationship among Alex, her brother, and her father. He was, from what I can remember, quite aggressive. So as well, a lot of his treatment of the main character haunts her as well. She carries that treatment and trauma with her, and that impacts how she goes about through life. But they find out that he was actually in the mines in this area trying to make some money because they find, I believe, a locket. This is the other thing. Alex, our main character, basically cheats death. She's shot and falls down a mine shaft. Is fine. Is fine. Is alive. Is fine. Yeah. So but this is also another character somewhat similarly to Rachel Amber, where you don't think or don't know that this character is dead until the end of the narrative game that you're playing. You pretty much think that he just picked up and fucked off one day, but actually he basically just didn't return from a job because he was fucking killed down there. I can't remember exactly why, but also maybe you should just go play the game or watch somebody's Let's Play. And then, yeah, this character, the main character Alex, learns more about her father as well, again through the character that killed him. And notes and finding shit. Like, now finally, sort of, this is our like final game for the moment. I know that Double Exposure is part 1 and there's a part 2 coming out at some point, and I'm making this video near to a year since the last game's release, so I wonder if it's coming out anytime soon. But in Double Exposure, I think there's a couple of characters that vaguely fit this haunting the narrative plot again. Double Exposure obviously has this student who we find out killed herself. Max Caulfield did not know this character at all. So yeah, there is a character who died before Max started working at this university as... See, this is the thing. If I had the energy and the time, I would also go and look into the fact of like when this timeline's supposed to have happened, because how is Max a photography lecturer? Is she not still a baby? Like, how old are these people? But there is a character who attended the university before Max became a professor or whatever, lecturer there, and her name was Maya, who was friends with Safi, who is Max's friend, oh my god, who also works at the university because her mum is the head master or something like that, nepo baby, blah, blah, I don't know. Maya, we find out, killed herself. Again, we do not learn anything about this character from her directly, and her death is one of the fueling components to this plotline overall, because there's a mystery pretty much that needs to be unfolded. Because the other possible character for haunting the narrative in a little bit of a non-traditional way, but it did say trapped in time or alternate universes and such forth, but Safi. I think Safi could also be another character who's haunting the narrative of this particular game, because in Max's original universe, Safi dies. Somebody has shot Safi, and I can't remember what the catalyst was for what exactly it was that made Max use her powers again. But Max hasn't used her powers in many years because big hurricane, scary. Didn't want to blow up the world again. So she hasn't used her powers in a really long time. But after Safi has died and everything seems really suspicious, I think she has a photo. Is it a photo of her holding a gun? I can't remember. But she tries to go back in time to when this photo was taken, but that ends up developing her new power of jumping between timelines / alternate universes. So in this other universe or timeline, Safi is not dead. So there is a timeline where she's dead, and the fact that she has died is haunting the narrative. She is haunting the narrative. You learn more about her through the same means as I've already gone through with a lot of these other characters, rather than actually directly from her in this other universe, because we find out her character is actually extremely evasive, because she's also like Max. She has her own power, which is morphing, I guess. She's basically Mystique, where she can just turn into somebody else, look like them, sound like them, etc. You kind of realize, especially the more you play the game or watch the game, a lot of these weird moments Max has with some of these other characters, it's probably Safi. And that in itself is another way you learn about Safi, rather than directly through her, is through the ways in which she's decided to manipulate these other characters in the plot. So yeah, Safi's death triggers the narrative of the Dead universe, which is the cop investigation into her death, including a photo of Max shooting Safi herself. So I have a particular question here that hasn't been answered yet, because I don't know if it's something going to be revealed in part 2 or what, but because I thought that this photo of Max holding this gun to shoot Safi could have been Safi herself looking like Max. But Max can use that photo to go back in time and be that Max in time. So yeah, I don't know. There's some confusion there for me personally. I don't know whether it's something they maybe just didn't think about, or if there is something specific that will be more clearly looked at in the next part. I don't know. And like I said, it also is the reason for Max's new power to come about, where she then is able to enter a different timeline. She's also able to use the timeline switching as a way to snoop on people in the other timeline, because she can also do part of her power where she can like kind of vaguely summon like ghost versions of people from the other timeline, and she can hear them talking. She can just stand right next to them but be in the other timeline, hear the entire conversation. So a lot of what she learns from people is directly from other people's mouths from this particular mode of snooping, and of course through looking at documents, etc. After explaining that part, I can kind of explain Safi's friend Maya then being the ghost haunting the narrative as well. We learn about her from other universe Safi really the most, but as well from some clues from other characters and around the university, whilst Max is trying to work out who killed Safi in her own timeline and try to get herself out of trouble. Her death is also just like inherently intertwined with the narrative of this part of the game and is inherently intertwined with Safi's story as well. The only reason why Safi does a lot of the things she does is because of her friend Maya, her death, and the way that she was treated unfairly in life and death, because we pretty much find out she had her work stolen by her professor. And he's still like walking around making money off of her work, unable to write anything himself because he's literally terrible. She's the catalyst for a lot of Safi's behavior in that other universe as well. So like, whilst I love multiple universe things, you know, like the Spider-Verse and stuff, it's so hard trying to explain things. But also, I think possibly Maya could be considered a lost Lenore as well, because it's not really specified. It seems like everybody in Double Exposure is canonically bisexual. I'm here for it. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm here for it. But there are some characters where it's not necessarily as clear cut. Like for me with Safi, I feel like it could have been romantic between her and Max. It could have been romantic between her and Moses. It was romantic between her and Vin, or like sexual. I don't know. Anyway, unpopular opinion. I actually don't hate Vin. Everybody hates Vin. I kind of don't. Vin, I believe, is canonically bi as well because he does date Safi, but he's also maybe dating this student. But also, yeah, like it seems like Safi and Maya could have possibly also been romantic, but we don't know Safi's sexuality. We don't know her orientation. We don't know her dating history. A lot of these things I've just said as well, like about Safi with Vin, were things that Safi didn't even tell Max, the main character herself. It's things that Max finds out through investigating and talking to other characters. And this is where for Max as well, she's sort of like, do I even know who Safi is? Because I thought she was my best friend, and now I'll find out all of this information that she just didn't tell me. I don't know how long they've known each other. And then as well, Maya could also fit into the dead to begin with trope as well. So I don't know how people are going to feel about this little format. Yeah, like I said, it was just something that I stumbled upon, and I find talking about and learning about tropes really interesting in media, whether it's TV, film, games, or books. So this is a particular trope that I, wasn't actively aware of. I was vaguely aware of it being a thing, but I didn't know what it was called and what it's specified as. So this video is kind of partly me learning these things. I'm not necessarily correct on everything I've said here because I've tried to learn these different tropes that have come up from tvtropes.org, but honestly, the way they write about tropes, they reference a bunch of other tropes all the time, and you have to then go and read about that trope, which then also references a million other tropes. So it's not, in my opinion, super like beginner friendly, because it's just a lot of, oh well this happened, oh and also this has happened, and oh that's a thing too, and don't forget to do that, or this is also could be considered under this umbrella of character trope, blah blah blah, rather than just kind of at least briefly explaining some of those tropes whilst on the page for a different trope. So yeah, basically it's just a lot of jargon. So if anybody has a better website or book recommendations, please, I fucking love, like, in an ideal world, one day I will own a bunch of books that kind of like talk about different media tropes and analysis and stuff that I can read and make my own notes in and use and reference and be like, here you go if you want to learn more, blah 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 blah. But I don't have that. I don't have that money for a start. Some of these books are quite expensive, but I can definitely at least listen to a lot of them through Spotify audiobook, maybe on Libby if I can find them. Oh yeah, so like if you have any recommendations for good books to read, better websites that kind of explain it a bit more directly without constantly referencing a million other tropes without explaining them on the page, amazing, please let me know. I just kind of wanted to throw this video together because I have wanted to talk about Life is Strange for so long, because I really enjoy these games. You know, they're not perfect, nothing's perfect to me, babe, but I really do like these games. Like I said, I think they're beautiful. I really like the character designs. I think like for me it is also just so fascinating how you would write a changeable narrative. That's something I don't know if I could wrap my head around, but that's fascinating to me, is the, you know, doing different things, making something different in the end, having a different outcome for a lot of things, like the relationships you have, even if the overall narrative, you know, remains like the same, is unchanged because someone's dead. But yeah, like a lot of the narratives, the things that they explore, they're usually somewhat reasonably diverse and always open to some kind of queer narrative, although that is my main complaint about Life is Strange 2 with Sean and Daniel. Like, I feel like Sean had the short end of the stick. He had awful options for romancing. I didn't like either of them. Like, sure, Cassidy seemed nice and fine, but I did not like her in that way. So I would have liked a different option for both of the, like, both man and woman. And I'm really pissed because they do have another gay character that's a guy. Actually, there's a few. There's like the people he lives with on the weed farm, like a few of them are gay. There's I can't remember any of their names, of course. But there is a black queer guy who you barely see anything of, but I love him. But then also the other guy who was in the cult and takes Daniel to the cult. But he's gay and he realizes he was wrong. So I would have liked something there. Would have liked something there instead of gross white dreadlock guy who isn't even morally grey. He's just an asshole. You know, Sean deserves better. He's either dead or in prison, trying to look after his little brother. Fucking, he deserved better. He deserved at least one decent kiss, you know. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about these games for so long, and then when I heard about this particular trope and saw someone mention, you know, Rachel Amber, I was just kind of thinking about these games. I was like, Life is Strange loves a haunting the narrative character, because there is pretty much at least one in every single game so far, if not multiple, or like people who fit kind of a similar trope in the games. So if you enjoyed my video of me talking about a particular trope in a particular game series, let me know if you would like to see more things similarly. Obviously, I can either talk about tropes in general, about maybe in certain genres of media, or again, a different series, whether it's game series, TV series, or film series. You know, let me know what you think about this format, and I'll see if it comes up again, if I learn anything new that will be good for making one of these. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, watch another video. What video shall I tell you to watch? Yeah, 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 yeah. Da, 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 da. This is vaguely similar to the video I made a little while ago about how there's always one English person in American crime dramas. Why do I keep saying crime dramas? In American medical dramas. You know, just me noticing a pattern and talking about it, basically. Oh, ghosts haunting the narrative. Dust haunting the narrative of my house. So yeah, go and watch that video. Support my channel. That's it from me this week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.